Hey, welcome back to the Shift Show. I know I say I don't really have guests on my podcast, but this is another exception. I'm here with my good friend and fellow coach, Scotty Stiles, and he has an amazing story of healing from chronic pain and all that great stuff. So, without further ado, welcome, Scotty. Feel free to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Adriana. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here today. My name is Scotty Stiles. I'm a pain elimination coach and mind-body practitioner from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. So, Adriana and I have known each other since 2019, and we both have similar stories. As you know, how we once had chronic symptoms. Didn't really know what was going on for us, and then eventually found out about the mind-body connection, mind-body medicine, and healed through psychological, emotional tools without changing the structures of the body at all. So yeah, I was excited to be here. I'm happy to talk about chronic pain and how it relates to the nervous system and how people can get better. And ultimately, I just hope people get something out of this conversation, even if it's one person, that healing is possible. Because I know you've shared your story, and people hear like how much different traumas and different things from childhood and whatnot can really shape your nervous system. And I have sort of similar things from my childhood too. So yeah, we can get into it. Yeah,
Totally. Awesome. So happy to have you here. And for the audience, we were literally saying right before I started recording, like we're both in Toronto. We should have just done this in person. So I'm probably going to have Scotty back on my podcast in the future for an in-person podcast, because I don't know why we didn't think about it, because we don't even live far from each other.
Totally. I love doing the collabs and in-person.
Totally.
Even do like a reel and show people that we're together in person in the flesh.
Exactly. But so super happy to have you here. And I guess start with like what chronic pain you had. Like how long were you in pain for, and what was going on?
Right. So, to today's date, I have had almost any symptom under the sun. I mean, there could be literally 1,000 symptoms, so I wouldn't say that many. But, anything from chronic musculoskeletal pain, so like back pain, hip, shoulder, foot, elbow, hand, wrist, many different post-viral symptoms. So, long COVID, which is simply just when there is no structural damage, it's just symptoms persisting that have been sort of learned by your nervous system, even though the infection has passed. Mm-hmm. And same with other post-viral things. I've had tinnitus. I've had lots of different, OCD type looping thought symptoms. So thoughts, sort of mental thoughts, anxiety, depression, panic disorder, different very bizarre ones like heat intolerance, or even the strange sour taste in my mouth that was very alarming and came out of nowhere. And
so random.
Yeah, really strange. That was a more recent one.
Wow.
Yeah, and so and also just to kind of jump ahead, and of course we'll go back, but I live in a chronic pain-free body now, but it doesn't mean my body doesn't speak to me. So even though I had like that symptom of very sour taste in my mouth a year ago, like it never stayed chronic. It was only for a day. And so this is just what happens when we learn that not all symptoms are structurally caused, and that the nervous system can produce these things. And we have to just learn the language of our nervous system to overcome them. But my main symptoms that kind of began on my journey were like the back and the hip pain, which is a very common symptom for most people. Like, even in the world that we live in, like you could walk around and pick up on conversations that people are having out at restaurants or family interactions and things like that. Even yesterday, I was at the pool and somebody was talking about his back and, oh, it's feeling better to sit down. And then he stood up and said, oh, it's feeling better to stand up. And, and people are lost because they don't know why. Like, does it feel better to sit or stand, or like what is the difference? And so I kind of was under that same, going through that same merry-go-round of not really knowing what was going on for probably 15 years, really, like from the time I was a teenager and starting to get sort of these back flares up until my mid 30s, I suppose. And that was pretty young, like at the age of 33, having pain every day. My body's failing me. It's just getting older. Maybe I should lose like 10 pounds, 20 pounds or something. And then I did, and I still wasn't better.
Of course.
You're just doing what everybody tells you to do.
Yep.
Oh, all of the things that I tried, I kind of laugh at now.
Same.
Yeah, I know, right? Like some of the wild ones were, I heard that if you got a rag and doused it in castor oil and put it on like on top of your skin where your liver is, that would cleanse you somehow. Yeah, that was one.
Interesting.
Yeah. I drove like, over an hour outside of Toronto to go see a Japanese healer that did kind of like a Reiki sort of thing. All of the sort of more biomechanical traditional things that we see in Western medicine, like chiropractic work, osteopath, massage. And sometimes these things would help, but temporarily. Now, in hindsight, I know that they were only helping because they were making my brain feel safe.
Yeah.
And so you'd find that next best thing and you'd be clinging to that hope, being like, okay, well, this is going to be it. I'm going to get better because my next door neighbor said that she has the best osteopath. So therefore, I must be able to trust them. Like they're going to get me better. Like they're an expert. They went to school. Like that's amazing. And then you commit and, you go to an osteopath 3 times a week and you're in excruciating pain. And then, and for some reason I would kind of feel a little bit better when I was there, but then when I wasn't. So that again points to the fact that something was going on in my brain and nervous system where if you felt a little bit safer or confident and that a treatment might specifically be working for that symptom, it might lower that threat response, that danger alarm mechanism from your nervous system. So in hindsight, it kind of makes sense like when those things did kind of work, but I didn't piece together that what was going on for me was actually not a structural problem. And, the biggest and hardest moment was that, time in my life when I had to quit working. I couldn't sit on a chair. I was afraid of going anywhere. I was agoraphobic. I had to stay home all the time, just lying flat on the hard floor in my living room. And a lot of things were going on in my life in hindsight that were probably enraging to my subconscious.
Yep.
We know that, repressed emotions and different ways that we relate to ourselves or interpret stress around us can set this danger signal of pain through neural circuits as well, through the body. So I was living with roommates and I was very, feeling very lost in life. And that's not what I wanted to be doing. I didn't want to be, sharing a house in my 30s with roommates that I wasn't even friends with. And then just being stuck in pain, feeling like you have no solution. Essentially, you kind of go through this, we call this sensitization trauma. So just by having symptoms themselves, it creates this trauma and you feel kind of stuck and bewildered and trapped and lost, that there is no solution. It's almost like having a terminal illness because you don't know if it's ever going to end. And the doctor is saying that they can help you, and everything that they say that you can try to do doesn't end up helping you. So I was completely lost. And then by the end of 2017, I stumbled across Dr. Sarno's book called Prescription. Yes.
That's his best book, The Mind-Body Prescription. I love that one.
Yeah. So that was my introduction to mind-body medicine.
Nice.
That was your introduction to it as well, wasn't it?
No, Curable.
Oh, Curable.
Yeah.
That's right. I remember that now. Yeah. So really and of course, Curable has sort of branched out from the teachings of Dr. Sarno as well. So, we could say that he's kind of like the godfather of mind-body medicine. Yeah.
He's my hero. Sarno is my hero. Like when I started Curable back in 2019, and if anyone's interested, I have a 6-week free trial of it. I'll put the link in the description of this podcast episode. But it saved my life. And it was basically like it said on the website at the time. I don't know if it still says it now, but it's basically like having Dr. Sarno in your pocket. And I thought it was bullshit at first, though. Like I was like, what is this app? Like, who's Dr. Sarno? Is he like a chiropractor or like pretending to be a doctor or some sort of snake oil salesman? And then when I realized, no, he was an actual doctor, this is legit, there's actual science behind it, and it worked. And I also did read the audiobooked the Mind-Body Prescription, and I definitely liked it better than Healing Back Pain, but they're both great.
Totally. Yeah. And Dr. Sarno, he was a physiatrist at the Rusk Institute University of New York, I believe, for decades, many, many decades, and then sadly passed away, I think 2016 or 17, right at that time when we were both kind of discovering mindbody medicine. Interestingly enough, I discovered his work in 2015, just 2 years prior, and I kind of, let it seep into, my understanding of what could be happening for me. But because I had this MRI and the surgeon had told me, well, you have bulging discs, spinal stenosis, femoral narrowing, arthritis, all of these things, I decided well, I have to trust what the doctor is saying, no? And so I kind of clung to that to sort of validate the pain experience that I was having, especially to this one particular roommate that I had, who, when I told her about Dr. Sarno, I said, this is amazing. He's actually saying that this pain, it means there's nothing wrong with you. And sure, there's something physical going on, but there's nothing structurally wrong with you. And you can actually heal by, recognizing repressed emotions and understanding the psychological link of, and neuroplasticity and all these things with how you relate to pain and how you relate to your life. And my roommate said to me, oh, so the pain's just in your head? And I got so mad. And then I kind of slowly, day by day, kind of started going back to that belief system that said, but it's my bulging discs, these things. So I'm going to continue doing these exercise programs and essentially doing things that continue to not help me because they were only addressing the symptom and not the cause.
Yeah.
And so
it's almost like, don't even tell anyone when you find out about the mind-body connections, right? Because so many people are not open to it. I've gotten just my ass handed to me by people when I've told them hey, the mind-body connection's a real thing. Look into this. And just people are so not receptive to it, which is so frustrating. And, if you're at the beginning of your healing journey like you were, it's so easy to be influenced by what these people are saying because it's this new information that's not necessarily mainstream. It's not common knowledge at all. No one knows about it. And so if someone has something bad to say, it's you kind of believe them because that's the majority of what people would say.
True. Yeah. And also it's what other people say about your own experience is their own judgment on what you're going through. And it says more about them than it says anything about you. You get to decide what you believe to be true. And you're right. It's probably better to just keep it to yourself. And why would I respect somebody that I didn't why would I respect somebody's opinion, this roommate that I had that I didn't care about at all? But, so ultimately at the end of the day, because we weren't really close and we weren't even friends for that matter, she was probably wanting to say anything negative about it and not be supportive of what I was doing anyway.
And the people pleasing, right? That's one of the personality traits of being a TMSer. I don't know if people are still using the term TMS, but I am. I might be outdated, but it's all good.
Yeah.
And it's they just, we're all people pleasers because of whatever trauma that caused these symptoms. So it's when someone's telling you this is wrong, there's that part of you that's oh, maybe you're right.
Totally. Even though they don't have our best interests in mind.
Or a clue.
Yeah. And you're right. It's keep your best things sacred to you. Even when I quit drinking alcohol or cigarettes, I knew enough to just kind of trust in the people that I could confide in because I didn't need anybody else's opinion, knowing that their opinion would just be a projection of their own insecurities on me. And so it's kind of the same thing with this healing work. We got to stay confident in knowing what's true for you because, we're talking about mind-body medicine because we know about the science, and most people, if it's just, they just heard about it or something and they don't have chronic pain, well, what good are they? They don't really know it all. And we are the ones that have really researched it all because we've lived it and we've experienced it. And that is kind of the last resort, sadly, for so many people, is that they, because those other things aren't helping, it's not like we're doing something barbaric or not listening to medical advice. We're just, we're not doing anything life-threatening by avoiding chiropractic or physiotherapy. If those things aren't working, you can't hurt yourself by not doing those things anymore. Right. And furthermore, Dr. Sarno, who coined the term TMS, and it stands for tension myositis syndrome, is just a fancy way to describe that your brain and nervous system is stuck in protection mode based on repressed emotional things, and perceiving that maybe you have a structural issue can cause that pain itself too. And that you can have all of these findings on MRI like I did and have no pain, which is just so remarkable. And so that is just our whole society, like you were saying too, has just not caught up to that belief. And so like my roommate, she's kind of believing what everybody in society was believing at the time. And so of course that's what anybody would say. And it's really kind of hard to fight that mainstream. Mainstream is not always right. Everybody in the world at one point in time believed that the earth was flat, and maybe some people still do, but among other things that are kind of blow your mind.
Weird beliefs that people have.
Right. Yeah. And so we just have to look at the science and look, like the science has evolved. We can still call it TMS, but now the term like that we typically use is either like mind body, like a mind body symptom, or a neuroplastic symptom, meaning it's like brain, neuro, and plastic, meaning the brain's ability to change, adapt, and form new connections. And so if the brain can learn pain, the brain can unlearn pain. And it's a simple way of looking at it. And Dr. Sarno's theories have evolved into other things like pain reprocessing therapy. And of course, there's all sorts of other sort of mind-body techniques that we can talk about. But essentially, it's using neuroplasticity, emotional processing to unlearn those neural circuits that have been learned and conditioned to send out that pain signal. So yeah, back in 2017, I saw his book in a used bookstore here in Toronto, Value Village.
Amazing.
And then I just said, I'm taking it off the book off the shelf. And I read it like really, really fast. I remember just devouring the book. And within a week, I had symptom reduction of pain that I'd had for 2 or 3 years on a daily basis.
Wow. So you're one of those unicorns who had a book cure.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But the thing is, the book cure, I don't think for anyone is permanent. So a book cure, I love to tell my clients now too, is that like, that's just that initial rush of safety that you're probably getting. And you might hear like, oh, so many people get a book cure, but it doesn't mean that there isn't more work to do. And then maybe you'll get a new symptom, in another part of the body, which, Dr. Sarno coined the term symptom imperative, meaning, it's imperative that your body and your nervous system will get your attention until that emotional safety is met. And so, after I healed my chronic back and hip pain, I did have other things show up. And that's the thing, the brain's going to keep testing you. So I had this chronic shoulder pain in 2020, and I fell for it again. I thought, oh, well, I've been swimming a lot, so this must be a structural issue. But no, my brain and nervous system learned protection in that part of the body once again. So it's so confusing for so many people because we are conditioned in the world that we live in that all physical pain is structural. And so it's really hard to overcome that biological instinct for anyone. And even still, if I have something that pops up, it can be confusing because it doesn't mean we shouldn't see doctors. Like we still want to be smart about things, because you could have something popping up and you want to, this is not an anti-doctor message at all. We just want to rule things out. And if they're saying, it's not a cancer, tumor, or fracture, or infection, and, there's no other solution other than, having a pill or something like this, then we can kind of have a good assessment that this might be neuroplastic. And there's different ways, that I talk about with my clients about how symptoms behave that like tell you whether or not your symptom is neuroplastic, such as like if it's inconsistent, or if it increases with stress, or if you have a history of different things like trauma, right? And it could be big T or little t trauma. And so depending on your upbringing, the way that you relate to stress in the world around you can be putting your brain, on high alert and make you more susceptible to learning chronic pain in your nervous system.
Totally. And I fall for it myself all the time. Like I spent a year almost with long COVID, which I recently found out is TMS at the end of the day. So I had a placebo cure from that. Because my brain fog was so bad that I even forgot that the mind body connection was a thing. So
wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. And so So I found this random study that like nicotine patches is what cures you from long COVID. I tried it. It immediately worked. Like 10 months of my life just in hell, couch ridden. After I had already done the work for my TMJ and migraines and carpal tunnel and all that.
Yeah.
And, you know, like in hindsight, it's like, oh my God, I fell for it for a year. But it's just such as life, right? Like it's, you know, there was more trauma that happened and that's how my body reacted. And when it's brain fog, it's really hard to think. And all of my knowledge of mind body connection just like went out the window. And I spent a year suffering until the placebo cure. And then I remembered the mind body connection.
Wow.
And then sure enough, just last year, I got psoriasis, which was so random because that's like autoimmune. So it's like you go to the doctor, they do the test, they say it's autoimmune. So it's like incurable. And then I was like, wait a minute, before I go to the dermatologist again, I'm going to just take a mind body approach. So I was like, I'm not fucking scared of these symptoms. I got rid of like the pine tar soap and like the special creams and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, no, I'm just going to use my regular stuff with scent and whatever. And within 2 weeks, all the rashes were gone and I have not had psoriasis since. So it is wild just how the brain sort of processes this stuff. And you can spend a year dealing with symptoms like I did with long COVID, or you can spend a few months and then just like cure yourself within 2 weeks because you just drop the fear and allow whatever to happen and just process whatever traumas happened.
Yeah, that's amazing. And there's so much science too to back up exactly what you're saying, like this perception of threat, that you have some sort of structural issue that needs to be resolved medically, continues to create that physiology in your own body. But physiology isn't necessarily pathology. And so you could be having all of these like crazy symptoms, even stuff on your skin and all this stuff. But the threat of it and that activation of it is actually caused by like your fear and your desire to get rid of it. And like, I gotta use all these creams and I can't have this. And as soon as you're like, fine, I surrender, I'm just gonna like, treat it as a nothing and as best as I can, because that's not easy either. But eventually your brain gets the message because you've done that so many times probably, right? And it's like, I just treat this thing as TMS and see how it happens. And oh my God, it blows my mind every time that this happens. Like, again, like I said, I don't get chronic symptoms where I'm so bewildered for months and years, but I'll have something and I'll be honest. And this is kind of a funny one and like a little bit of a personal one, but I had my newest and most recent symptom was having a fissure. That we have these things called fissures and hemorrhoids that can happen. And those are actual structural things. And again, the brain can, sometimes produce pain or not produce pain, even when there's something structural going on. Like somebody could break their ankle when they're running away from a tiger and not feel any pain because the nervous system is trying to protect them and keep them alive. And they will not feel any pain while they're running away from the tiger because their life depends on it. But then as soon as they reach safety, then maybe that's when their ankle starts to get their attention and they actually do feel the pain. The same thing could be true with like how your brain is perceiving, how much danger or threat you are in with regard to something as what seems as relatively simple to sort of medically resolve as a fissure. But for me, it wasn't resolving. And I was doing what the specialist told me, who, by the way, was able to like stick their finger in my butt. It was very graphic and say, yeah, I see it. He was able to produce pain with his finger. So you think, okay, he knows what he's doing. And then they prescribe you this cream. And I did this for like about a month and it was supposed to be better in just a couple of weeks and it wasn't.
Wow.
So you know what I started to do? Well, I was like, I'm not, by not taking this doctor's advice, I'm not putting myself at risk medically. There's no infection. I don't, it's not like I'm just stopping antibiotic or not, doing anything life-threatening. And so I just decided I'm going to treat it as TMS, treat it as neuroplastic, really try to be indifferent to the sensation, try to behaviorally teach myself that I'm safe, do what I need to do. I'm not going to avoid things. And I'm going to stop, using the medication, stop using the cream. And within a week, completely better.
Amazing.
Isn't that crazy?
That is It's not because that's how TMS works, but that is so crazy. Like,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
I know. See, the body heals though, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's interesting because I had a conversation with the doctor over on a phone consultation, and he said that like the cream anyway is just meant to be supportive because it's supposed to bring blood to that area. Well, guess what is probably depriving blood to that area when the symptoms are aggravated? It's probably like your fear and the tension in these neural circuits of threat are being activated by your nervous system. And believe it or not, it can create spasming and holding and tension in that part of the body that you so desperately want to not have a problem in. Right? And so just this hyper awareness of there being a threat in that part of the body just creates more of it. And so it kind of makes sense with the term neuroplastic, because it's like neuroplasticity is like what you focus on grows and expands. So the more I was like focusing on this like rectum discomfort, the louder it got. So I had to just get to this place of like complete surrender, complete allowing, using pain reprocessing therapy techniques like somatic tracking, and just like allowing that sensation to just be there and not going to fix it. I'm even going to ride a bike, even though that's uncomfortable. I'm going to do all the things that I'm not supposed to do. And I got better. And you know what's funny? I said to the doctor on the phone, I said, because I just wanted to see what he would say. And I didn't go down the whole rabbit hole, like, I think it's neuroplastic too.
Yeah.
I said, like, I stopped using the cream and I started to feel better. And he didn't really have much to say about it. He actually just said, oh, well, I wouldn't advise you to do that. And even though he said I wouldn't advise you to do that, I'm still not using the cream.
Good.
Because if I were to put the cream on, I'd be communicating a message to my brain that there's something actually wrong with me still. And again, the body's still going to heal with or without that cream. He even said that himself. It's just meant to be supportive and increase blood flow to that area. So am I, if I don't put the cream on, does that mean I'll never get blood flow to the area? No, that's not what he said at all. But he's just saying what he knows. Not all doctors are trained in mind-body medicine.
None of them are.
There we go. Yeah.
Well, the 5 that are, you'll see them online talking about it.
True. Yeah, there's like literally maybe 5, maybe more. But yeah, the 5, like the big ones that we know about that really like put this work out there. And yeah, so yeah, it's just so funny. And but he only knows what he knows. And most doctors are trained in what they know, which is treating symptoms. And maybe that's helpful to a certain extent, but it doesn't necessarily address the root cause. So interestingly enough, the root cause was communicating to my brain and nervous system that even though I might have a structural finding, I didn't need to do anything about it because it's going to get better on its own. And so, yeah, that's just kind of a little bit of what went on in there for that symptom specifically. But but all in all, so going back into my story a bit, it was a turbulent ride. Like when we met, I thought I was there. In 2019, I thought I've been doing this journaling work. I discovered the work of Nicole Sachs, which you and I both around the same time discovered that, journaling about repressed emotions and your childhood and your current life and your personality traits can actually release a lot of this stored repressed emotions and things that could be contributing to your symptoms. And that was so profound for me at the time, and it actually worked. So maybe we could pause there and you could tell me what you think about the journaling too.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I need journaling.
Yeah.
But not everyone does. But I do feel like if I stop journaling for a while, I start getting a kink in my neck, and it's my nervous system screaming at me that I have to process some emotions. And I know Nicole Sachs said something along the lines of journaling is the most efficient way to get there and get those emotions out. So I just go with it. But yeah, I've never been good at like the visualization or anything like that. I don't know if it's because I have ADHD and just my brain's all over the place, but I feel like the journaling, I'm just like focusing, doing the thing. There's a 20-minute timer, and then we just see what happens, and it pretty much always works.
Yeah. It was so profound for me, like to learn from her about expressive writing. And, I've even heard that expressive writing in this way has like an anti-inflammatory effect on the body. And, it's not just like a dear diary, this is what I did today. It's like literally just being honest with yourself, because a lot of the reason why you might be stuck in pain is because you're not feeling safe with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you're trying to push things down and you're in denial. Like maybe I was, obviously I was not happy living with roommates at that time, but I was, trying to keep it together. Like, oh, it's going to save me money. And, oh, I got to do this thing. But there's a part of me deep down inside that hated it. So I needed to acknowledge that.
Mm-hmm.
As well as all of the other things in my life that led up to it that, were conditioned, my belief about who I was, like hiding my sexuality, not feeling good enough, feeling like different than all the other boys,
Mm-hmm.
having bullies, as we know about, narcissistic abuse, like
Yep.
a lot of stuff that we can learn about ourselves in relationships. And typically if we're on the receiving end of the abuse, we're going to interpret that as like it being our fault.
Yep.
Right. And then as a result, we develop these maladaptive coping mechanisms like the people pleasing, the perfectionism, and we're shoving down all of that anger that we're truly feeling, not letting it out. So the journaling is like the perfect avenue. So of course I was writing about my childhood and all the people that upset me. And even if those people were like people that I still love in my life, but we have to reconcile that you can love something and hate something that he did. And there's, many layers depending on what the relationship with every person that you are journaling about. But ultimately it comes down to, I think, the relationship you have with yourself.
Yes, that's exactly it. And that's the thing, like when you've been bullied or abused by a narcissist, you don't really have a relationship with yourself. So I think that once your body screams at you enough to even look into the mind body work, it's like, not only do you get out of pain, but this is how you create and repair that relationship with yourself. And that's everything.
Wow. Yeah. And it's kind of funny, like the way you described it is just like makes so much sense to me. It's like your body's screaming at you because you're not like loving yourself. It sounds cheesy to say it that way, but that's what it is. It's like a message from your nervous system saying like, things are in fire because you are not treating yourself with kindness and you're not putting yourself first. You've been taken advantage of for so long, like pay attention, right?
Yep.
Like if you're being gaslit, you're not even aware of it.
Exactly. And that's the whole point. Like, I think, I mean, I know not everyone who has mind body syndrome has necessarily been narcissistically abused, but I do feel like narcissists are a big contributing factor to it because like they're forcing you to repress your emotions. They're telling you your emotions are wrong and they're shaming you for being angry. And that rage, like what Sarno described, that like inner child that's so pissed off about what they went through, they were never allowed to be angry. And so the brain kind of sees that as a life and death situation. And the thing with emotions, in my opinion, I think they're messengers, right? Like if you're angry, it's not for no reason.
Yeah.
If someone's pissing you off, like you want to explore why that's happening. Don't explore it with them because if you're dealing with a narcissist, that's going to get you nowhere. Exactly. Explore it within yourself. But this is not like, no one has given us this information in life ever. Mm-hmm. So I just think like it's so important for people like us to just spread the word about this because it's so important to like understand your own emotions and repair that relationship with yourself. And not only that, like with what I do with my clients and healing from narcissistic abuse, it's like once you actually understand your own emotional reactions and your emotions, like you can feel when someone's manipulating you.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. It's the coolest thing. And it's like, that's really like a byproduct of becoming your own best friend.
Yeah. Yeah. Your nervous system is like literally like scanning for threats and danger.
Mm-hmm.
It starts to tell you through sympathetic energy, and you might feel that sympathetic energy once you learn the language of your nervous system. And then typically if people aren't aware of that sympathetic energy, it'll just convert itself into, a symptom like any of the ones that we had.
Yep.
Literally any symptom in the body. If the body has the mechanism to produce it through like a pathogen or something structural, that same sensation and quality and feeling can be produced without any tissue damage at all.
Yeah,
so somebody can have like excruciating knee pain from falling on their knee, but that same pain that is like really, really hurting could be from that repressed emotional energy from the narcissist, or repressing yourself, right? I think, you and I are very similar in this way where, we learned that it was dangerous to speak up sort of way. And, for me, I guess the narcissist in my life could have been like society and patriarchy about like, how men should be not gay, and masculine, and the whole male role and the male gaze and all this stuff. So that became a threat to just be who I was. And like, that is just mind boggling to think, looking back as like, thinking about a child having to go through that and keep that secret. Like, it's no wonder I formed this functional relationship with fear, and really just like, I can't acknowledge that. I can't acknowledge that. And then of course the pain comes in, and just like you said, it was actually a messenger to help you to connect to you, to say like, hey, like, you can be yourself. You don't have to, continue to believe all of these things that are untrue about society, or what society thinks about you. So
yeah, exactly. And like, I cannot imagine like what you had to go through in the 90s and early 2000s, where it was just like so taboo to just be gay. And, think of all those repressed emotions and like repressing yourself and who you are as a person. Of course, your body's going to scream at you.
Right. Yeah. Nobody was telling me it was okay. And that's not to say anyone's at fault, like in my family, but like nobody that I knew in my immediate family was gay. And my parents, even though they had like gay friends, they just still didn't talk about it. I think even society in general was trying to repress like talking about that so openly. Kids grow up today, and like, luckily for them, most of the time, I hope, like they're sharing it with their classmates and everything, and it's just like pretty normal. But it's just the way we were raised. Like, we were born into a straight world, and nobody has to announce their sexuality when they're 10. It's just assumed that they're straight, right? So so it's kind of funny looking back at like the history of like the way things were like in the 80s. Well, in the 90s really is when I kind of really knew. Perhaps maybe even the 80s. I was like, I knew I was different in some ways. I was very creative. I maybe was not, into the typical things that boys were into, like sports and things like that. But it's funny to think back, like one of the first times I heard that it was okay to be gay was in the 90s. Talk show hosts, like talk shows were really popular. And, there was Oprah and Phil Donahue, all those ones.
Yep.
And then Ricky Lake came on.
And she's big into the TMS world too. So like, what a full circle.
When I heard that she was friends with Nicole Sachs, my mind was blown. Shout out to Ricky as well, if you're listening. So Ricky Lake had this episode, and she had these people, and it was like, back in those days, you'd have these people fighting on stage. So you'd have these like religious fanatics that homosexuality is a sin. And then you'd have these gay people on stage, and Ricky was standing up for the gays. And I just thought, oh, wow, like this is exactly what I needed to hear. And I'm watching it with like my family kind of in the kitchen, and I'm just like glued to the TV. Like, I hope they don't listen to what I'm watching and think like I'm watching this for any reason. But either way, I was just like, oh my God, that person is like, this symbol of hope in society that, other people think this way, and thank goodness. And that was sort of like an indication that the mainstream could feel this way too. If somebody with such a, a high, had a high, what do you call it? Like a pedestal or a spokesperson could say that this is okay, that somebody's, standing up for what's right, because, all the things she was saying were true. Like, people are born this way. Like, how could you be wrong if this is how you were born and this is who you are? And so, wow, I certainly needed to hear that. But of course, these things take time to move through culture. And, just a couple of years later, I saw Ellen DeGeneres come out on her sitcom, her TV show. And she was on Oprah talking about it. And there was this huge backlash. Even audience guests were like really combative with her. Man, they should have screened that audience. But so at that moment, I think in like 1998, I thought, well, I can't come out now. I'm still in high school. Like, I don't want that to happen. Like, clearly people weren't ready for it. And so it wasn't until like another 5 years later or so, I think Rosie O'Donnell finally came out, and then Ellen got her talk show, and things were starting to come around. Oh, okay, Ellen's now being accepted. And so, you kind of base like whether you feel safe or not in society based on sometimes what's going on in the media.
Yeah.
And and so that's eventually I did come out because I thought, okay, I'm seeing other maybe celebrities do it. A few people in my life I'm seeing doing it too. And it just kind of becomes this trickle effect. But here's the thing. It's like, okay, I came out of the closet. I thought all my problems were over.
Nope.
Myself now. Oh, that's when the chronic pain journey actually started to get worse because
That makes sense.
yeah, all of those protective patterns and traits and personality traits that I learned to like perfect and sort of have this image of who I wanted to be was still there. Like the stakes were so high still. So yeah, I suppose I could be myself in some regards, but I was still, really trying to feel like everything in my life needed to be a certain way. And if it wasn't, I'd feel devastated.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense, honestly, like that the chronic pain started after, because for me, when I found out my mother was a narcissist, I started getting chronic pain a year later. So I feel like it's once we're out of that survival mode in a way, that's when the body starts reacting and telling you like, hey, take a look at some shit in here.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, you're not done yet. Like you might have gotten yourself out of that sort of emergency situation. Yeah. But now it's like the deep work of unlearning all of those years of conditioning and your brain perceiving threat, and your brain learned that certain emotions are unsafe. And just by coming out of the closet or just by, removing a narcissist from your life doesn't mean that your brain is not still in that protective mode.
Exactly. That's when the actual work begins.
Yeah. Wow. And, I'm still unlearning patterns, and part of it is like, we are who we are, and that's okay too. Like, we learned to be kind of heroes of our own story. And, we know how to pull back on certain personality traits, even though these personality traits are things that people love. Like, we're good people. We like to do nice things for people. But when it starts to become like at the expense of our own needs, our body will speak to us and message saying, hey, maybe you need time for yourself, or maybe you're not doing this because it's truthful to you, and you are just doing something because you think somebody will like this. And so that's kind of what the gift is, really. You start to kind of learn, like, what's the language of the nervous system? And if I'm having a symptom, what is it that I'm not paying attention to in my life? Am I being true to myself? Where is it that I am not trusting myself? Could be so many things.
Exactly. It makes so much sense. And before we wrap up, any final words of wisdom for anyone that's listening to this podcast episode?
Yeah, totally. If you are just learning about mind-body medicine, hold on to it, sink into it, get started. You have to start somewhere. And, if somebody's listening to this today and it just, reaches one person, so many of us think like, well, that can't work for me. I thought that. I'm sure you thought that too, so just know, like, we all think that we're the exception to the rule. And just give it a shot, because you have nothing to lose. And also try to recognize if you're on the fence, because again, as I pointed out, I was on that fence still in 2015 when I first discovered Dr. Sarno's work and thought, okay, let's explore that. But I was still fooling myself, because I was still attempting all of the physical things that weren't helping me anymore. And it's really hard to cut out that noise, right? Like, even to this day in Toronto, like, I'll go around the city and I'll see like those dental clinics that talk about TMJ, because I'm like, it's so convincing, right? It looks like they've got all this graphic image of people having surgeries, and like, it looks like it's legitimate. Like, oh,
I was going to a TMJ clinic in like Milton because they were like the best one, and it was just bullshit.
Right. And people will be like, well, how come? Like, they've gone to school, they're doctors, they're like, huge, like big in their careers. But here's the thing, it's like, sometimes things work, but not for the reason why we think they do. And people can have a placebo surgery. There's literal studies about this, about people having like knee surgery, and they're getting the placebo. So they believe they got the surgery, and their body, their physiology still responded as if they got the surgery, even though they never even had the surgery at all. There's always going to be a placebo to it. And so wouldn't you rather heal your body naturally without having to do something barbaric, like going into your face or your limbs or whatever it is, if it's a placebo anyway? right? And sometimes people will heal that part of the body through a surgery. Like, sure, they've done something on paper that's made their brain and nervous system sort of feel safer about that part of the body, but then they might get a new symptom popping up in another part of the body because that, threat detection system has not been sort of recognized in this psychological, emotional way that we've talked about. So yeah, that's my message of hope, is to not be deterred and stick with it. There's so much to learn. There's so much information out there. If people want to follow me as well, you can find me. I go by the name How to Heal Chronic Pain. I'm on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and of course, the links and stuff will be in the show notes. But yeah, so, and I do coaching as well. If people need extra support on this and their journey, sometimes we need a little extra hand holding, support, this other, additional belief that maybe we're kind of struggling with at the beginning. And people find this support really helpful as well. So, and, honestly, reach out if you have any questions too. I'm always here to answer questions about how this process works too. So, yeah.
Amazing. Yes, we'll have all your links. All of Scotty's links are in the description underneath this podcast episode, wherever you're listening to it. And you can find him all over social media, work with him, ask him questions, all that great stuff. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been so much fun, and I will definitely have you back on in the near future.
Amazing. I'm excited to come back. We'll do a part 2, and it's been great to hang out.
Yay.